Good morning everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to make raisin bread. Let's get started with the ingredients. The first thing I have here is yeast, which it is bubbling up beautifully. 1 package of yeast, or 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. To that, 1/4 cup of warm water, and you will add 1 tablespoon of sugar to your yeast to watch it bubble up and rise and make sure. It's basically feeding the yeast to make sure that it's alive, which it is. It's beautiful. You will need 3 large eggs, 6 tablespoons of butter, 1 tablespoon of honey, along with 1 additional tablespoon of sugar. You will also need 1 tablespoon plus a teaspoon of kosher salt. And in this pot, I have 2 cups of milk and 2 cups of water. So 4 cups of liquid total. So to the 2 cups of milk and water, you will add your 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 tablespoon of sugar. You will add your 1 tablespoon plus a teaspoon of kosher salt. I always use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. And your 6 tablespoons of butter. You're going to heat this up until it's warm. The butter may not be completely melted here. You want your mixture to be, once again, at about 110 to 115 degrees. So in this bowl, we're starting off with 7 cups of flour. And we're also going to add a pound of raisins. So I have 12 ounces of the dark raisins, and I'm going to add 4 ounces of the golden. You can mix as I'm doing here, or you can just use all of one kind. And the first step is to first take your 7 cups of flour, and you're going to pour your 3 eggs, which I just whisked up, into the center of the bowl. Then you can add your yeast mixture. So here is our yeast. And the reason why you want your mixture to be at the right temperature, if it's too hot, you will kill your yeast, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so just make sure that this is not too hot. And so we'll go ahead and add our milk now. Let me just give this a little stir here. And I'm slowly just taking my rubber spatula and slowly adding my milk in, right in the center of the bowl, adding a little more flour each time. And adding a little more flour and stirring as you go. This is going to be a very wet mixture at this point. This dough will need to rise for about 2 to 2.5 hours. And you do need a nice large bowl, because I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but this makes about 5 to 6 loaves of raisin bread. Okay, all of our milk is in, so now I'm just going to use my rubber spatula and kind of go around the edge of the bowl and incorporate all the flour into our milk, eggs, and yeast. I should also mention that I take my raisins and I like to plump them up a little bit. So you would put them in a container and fill it just to cover the raisins. Don't add too much water. You want to just cover your raisins with hot water and just let them sit for about 5 to 10 minutes until your raisins are nice and plump. And then you want to strain it and put them on a paper towel and make sure they're nice and dry. Okay, so here is our beautiful loose dough. Hopefully you can see that now. There you go. It's very, very loose, right? And that's pretty much the way you want it. And you're going to leave it here in this bowl. I'm going to just dust the top of it with a little bit of extra flour, and then cover it tightly with saran wrap and let this sit for about 2 to 2.5 hours. And then we'll move on to our next step, which is adding more flour and, of course, our raisins. Just take a little bit of flour. I'm using a strainer here. You just pour it over here, and you just want to dust it lightly with some flour. So our 2.5 hours is up, and our dough has risen beautifully. I'm going to bring it close so that you can see the dough. It's reached almost the top of the bowl. There's a little bit still of the flour on top. And now what we're going to do is take 4 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour and add it. You can first, if you want, you can first punch down the dough, but the first thing I'm going to do is first put a little bit of flour on the top and then just press it in. And you can use a pastry scraper to go along the sides of your bowl to bring in the dough into the flour. At this point, we're also going to add our raisins. And I just want to show you the raisins. I told you that I put them in a bowl of very hot water and only for about 7 minutes, and then I drained them and I put them on a sheet of paper towel because you want to make sure that your raisins are nice and dry. So at this point, I can lift up the raisins and add them to my dough, okay? So the raisins are now on top of my dough. And now I will go ahead and add the remainder of my flour. So let me just get the flour over the top of the raisins. And once again, press down. To incorporate the raisins into the dough. I will use my pastry scraper again. So now I'm going to go in and turn the dough into the center. So we have a total right now of 11 cups of flour, and I have 1 additional cup of flour that I'm going to use for my work surface. Now I'm just going to use my hands to really press the raisins and get the remainder of the flour in here. So now let me just take a little bit of flour and put it on my work surface here and pour. I have some raisins here that still need to go into the dough. So there's our bowl, okay? And you can use the heel of your hand to press the raisins into the dough. You see how I'm pushing it, rolling it towards me and pressing it in to get all of the raisins in. Okay. Roll it in again. And one last time. There we go. It's a lot of dough to knead at the same time, but if you want, you can cut this in half and do it in pieces if you wanted to. So I covered it nicely with a little bit of flour. This is my 1 additional cup of flour here. Now lift it and then just knead it. And you want to knead this probably for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to put it back in our bowl, cover it, and let it rise for about 45 minutes to an hour, closer to an hour. And as you can see, I'm only adding flour when it seems like it's just getting a little bit sticky. But as long as you can move it around, you're good. It's really starting to feel nice, really nice. it is definitely not sticking anymore to my board, to my hands. So it's really looking good. Okay, here is our beautiful dough. And now I'm going to get the same bowl that I had it in and just place it right into the bowl. Like so. Okay, and I'll cover this up and we'll be back in an hour. Okay, our dough has risen for an hour. I'm going to take the plastic off and show you the beautiful dough. And now I have my surface lightly dusted with flour, and I'm going to put the dough right onto the surface. And this will be its final rise before baking. Okay. So depending on the size, oh, this looks beautiful. Depending on the size of your pans, and I actually have various sizes here, as you can see. This one is a 10 by 5. This is a 9 by 4. I have all the pans buttered. So you just want to get them all buttered up. And you want to have the pans full about halfway, and then they will rise all the way to the top. So the first thing I'll do is just take my pastry scraper and let's cut the dough first in half. So the larger pan is going to need more dough than the smaller one, obviously. If you have all the same size pans, you won't quite have the dilemma that I have here. So here's half of my dough. Okay, and I would say for the smaller one here, all right, I'm gonna do a third here. Let's start with a third of the dough and see what that gives me. So all I'm going to do, this isn't that difficult. I'm just kind of eyeballing it to see how it's going to fit here in my pan. This kind of looks like that is just about enough. And then you can see it. So there's enough room for the dough to rise. And I think that's just about enough dough. And let's grab another third for the 9 by 4, and I think that'll be just enough as well. So there you go. And that's about halfway up. I will take a dish towel at this point and just cover it with a dish towel and let this rise for an hour. Okay, so I just put in our first batch into the oven, and I think you can see how nice it has risen. And I just have a simple water bottle here, just a spray bottle with water in it, and I'm going to spray it real quick, about 8 to 10 times, and close the oven. Set my timer for 2 minutes, and I'll do it one more time, and then you can just let it go for about 45 minutes. Okay, our bread just came out. It took exactly 45 minutes. So I just wanted to show you the bread that's now going to go into the oven, because I don't have enough room to put all 5 in at the same time. So I wanted you to see how it comes pretty much right to the top of the pan. And once again, I'm going to spray it with my water bottle. So you're just going to mist the top, about 8 to 10 times. 2 minutes later, do it again, and then set your timer. So these are going to go into the oven, and I'll be right back. You want to take it out of the pan right away once they come out of the oven. Okay, and then set them on a rack. Here is our beautiful raisin bread. It's too warm to slice now, but it will be perfect for breakfast tomorrow. Well, I hope you get a chance to make this bread. It's really, really good. Okay, bon appetit, everyone. See you again soon. Bye now.